Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. We're going to give just a couple more seconds for people to trickle in, and then we're going to get started. All right, time to get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to talk today about creating people-first employee journeys. We're so thrilled to have you here with us as we dive into how companies like yours can balance technology and empathy in today's modern workforce. So how do we become more efficient without losing that personal touch? We're going to get into that. I'm Ginny Drinker, SVP of Partnerships here at Employ, and I'll be your host and moderator for today. Now, before we get started, I want to touch on the agenda. We'll do some introductions. We've got a great set of panelists here. Then we're going to get into the discussion. Throughout the discussion, we'll have some polls and some other things to keep you engaged. And finally, we will have time at the end for audience Q&A. Let's talk a few logistics. Audio and video. So you're all muted by default. No worries if your dog barks or, if somebody sneaks up behind you in the background, a kid that's homesick or whatever it may be. Nobody's going to hear it. However, you will still be able to interact with us both through the chat and through the Q&A. And speaking of Q&A, we encourage you to ask questions all throughout. You can submit them anytime using the Q&A box, and we have dedicated time at the end to get to those. If we don't get to your question for whatever reason, we are going to follow up afterward and make sure everybody's question is addressed. I mentioned that we'll also have polls and engagement during the session. So they're going to be live polls. They'll pop up on your screen. We would love for you to participate. We want to learn more about what you're doing as well, and that'll help guide our discussion today. This is a live discussion. There's no script. This is just us sharing with you our thoughts as we go, and so your input and feedback on the polls will really help guide that. And finally, at the end of the session, right after the Q&A, there will be one final poll, so please stick around for that. We're going to launch one that will give you an opportunity to let us know if you're interested in hearing more about today's sponsors and the services that they offer. We are also recording the webinar, so if there's something that we say that you just didn't get a chance to jot down, no worries. You can go back and watch it later. We'll be sure to share that out. We're also super excited that today's session is eligible for 1 hour of SHRM and HRCI recertification credit. Not only will the credit code be available as the very last slide of our presentation today, but we will also be sending that out via email to any of those that attend for the full hour. And finally, tech support. If you run into any issues along the way, first and foremost, just try refreshing your browser. If that doesn't work, we have some great helpers in the background who are available, so just drop a message in the chat and they'll do their best to assist you. All right. With all of that being covered, we're going to introduce today's speakers. I introduced myself and what I do, but I also want to share with you that I've been leading strategic alliances and partnerships teams in human capital management for over 15 years now. And that's afforded me the opportunity to get to know people and companies who are really innovative across the entire human capital management lifecycle. And through that, I've met some wonderful people like today's panelists who I'm super excited for you to hear from. As we prepared for this session, I really learned a lot about how much they are experts and leaders in this industry, and I think they'll have a lot to share with you. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike Rockwell to introduce himself first.
Hey everyone, happy Thursday. My name is Mike Rockwell. I'm the Vice President of Account Management at Verified First. I've been working in the HR tech space for probably well over a decade. Prior to that, I worked in IT organizations at big banks in New York. And more importantly, and this is going to sound silly, I spent the first half of my 20s working in the service industry, where I learned people and relationships and how to have conversations. And that's what sort of drives me. The HR piece is separate, the people piece is first. And one morning, Ginny talked about how you guys are protected from your dogs and your animals. I'm not. So I have a lot of them. You may see a dog or a bird or some other creature just show up on camera. Apologies in advance. I'll pass it over to Dorothy.
Dorothy, we can't hear you. I believe you might be on mute.
That never happens. Okay, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I'm Dorothy Enriquez. I am the principal consultant and founder here at the Ellevate Collective. We are the creators of the Culture Transformation Formula. I am here on behalf of GoCo, and I want to tell you all a little bit about GoCo. We here at GoCo, our goal is to make your work life easier. Who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want that? So whether you're an HR professional or you're in an admin or even a leadership role, we're focused on the HR functions. Yes, yes. We help automate those manual tasks so that you don't have to. You can spend more time focusing on what's most important, building happier, healthier teams. So we're here to help you make the magic happen. And I will pass it on over to Ben.
All right. Thank you, Dorothy. Hey, everybody. So glad to be here with you. Looking forward to a fun session today. So I'm an author, speaker, researcher, and honestly, I wanted to be in HR when I was a kid, even before I knew what it was called. So as we go through today, I'll share some of the data, some of the research that my team and I collect to try to help HR and talent leaders like all of you be better at the work you do, know more things, and hopefully be a little sharper in your HR and talent practices. It's going to be a fun session. You've got an incredible set of panelists here today. And Ginny, I think we're all ready to roll.
Sounds good. Thanks for those introductions. So before we get going, let's set the stage. Let's take a quick snapshot of what's happening in the labor market right now, because there's some interesting things that are shaping the future of HR. One of the things here that I'd like to talk about is this split. The market's sort of bifurcated right now in that there are frontline jobs that are in high demand, think nurses and teachers. And then on the other side, we're seeing tons of layoffs in the white collar market. I know I'm personally seeing that all over my LinkedIn. So there's a lot going on there. And then on top of that, AI is booming. 93% of talent acquisition leaders are saying that they're going to invest this year even more in AI. And job seekers are already doing it in every aspect of their job application process, from writing their resume to preparing for interviews. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that. We're also seeing a shift to skill-based hiring. And so what does that mean and why? Why is that shift happening today? And of course, we can't forget about remote and hybrid work. As someone who's coming to you from her own home office, and I've worked from home about 10 years, I know that story well, but it's really been at the forefront of conversations over the past 5 years. And so we'll talk a little bit more about what that means now and in the future. But before we get into the discussion, I want to open it up to the panelists on what they're seeing. What's the state of the state from their perspective? And I think, Ben, I'd like to start with you. What are you seeing and hearing out there?
Goodness, what am I not seeing and hearing, Jenny? There's so much going on. We just finished a big study on talent acquisition, and you have the stat here on job seekers using AI. One of the things we found in the data is that 80+% of employers can't even pick out which resumes are AI generated sometimes. And so like that's to me is surprising and is a reminder that even though we think we're really good at some things, we're not always as good as we think we are. Not only that, we're also seeing that some of the things that we sometimes take for granted as employers, we assume that we're doing the right things around creating a fast and easy apply process, for example, or being transparent with pay. What we hear from candidates is that they're not seeing that nearly as much as they'd like to from the employers out there. So there's a whole range of things I could talk about beyond just talent acquisition, but there's a couple of quick things I'm hearing from employers, I'm seeing in the market that are real challenges and struggles. And it's one of those things that today we're going to get some advice and tips around those things. That's what I love about starting off with a little bit of the state, as you said, is as we go through today, we're going to hopefully give the audience some ideas on how to solve for some of this stuff.
All right. Dorothy, Mike, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think just to kind of span out from there, what I am hearing is on the organizational side, general concern. When we think about this idea of as humans with our human eye and our experience and our background, our competence and our capability, and we can't tell the difference between a resume that was written by AI and a resume that was written by an actual person, what that does, I think, is it causes, trepidation, but also no one wants to say, I'm scared of a machine or I'm scared of a robot. But what I am noticing is that organizations really were fighting against AI. Like, no, you better not. We better not find out that you're using ChatGPT at work. We better not find out that you use something else other than ChatGPT because we don't know what else is available. And what I'm seeing now is that because it's so unavoidable and it's so inevitable, organizations are starting to say, you know what? Folks are going to be doing this, so we need to create some rules, some regulations and some boundaries. And then on top of that, there is that internal fear for each individual team member that says, OMG, am I about to be replaced by AI? Is my job about to be done by a computer, a machine, a robot? And so I think that is also present in the state of the state as well.
I would double down on all of that. Everything you just said, Dorothy. I am seeing so much of that, not just with the resume stuff, but with operational tasks, with people crafting marketing emails using ChatGPT or other alternatives. And the thing that's standing out to me the most is, and I think you touched on this, IT leaders are starting to come in now and be like, is our data secure? Are we putting the wrong things out there? Can our competitors see our stuff? That to me is incredibly scary. And I think it's going to become more and more and more prevalent for quite a while. The resume thing though, man, I'm seeing so much of that. It's really interesting. I'm not going to take too long. I actually was hiring someone earlier in the year, and out of 8 of the resumes that I took in my first week, I found out 4 of them actually used AI to actually draft and streamline their resume. And they admitted that when I chatted with them. It was really, really eye-opening.
Interesting. Loving all these insights into the big picture. So many great trends to discuss and sort of unpack as we move forward. So with that in mind, we've kind of touched on this a little bit already. Let's zoom in on one of the biggest day-to-day challenges that HR teams are really facing, and that's balancing efficiency and personalization. So with that in mind, I'd like each of our panelists to share how you're each seeing organizations leverage technology advances while still keeping things personal for employees. How do we take advantage of technology, become more efficient through technology, become better at our jobs, and then at the same time, make sure that technology doesn't take away the personal touch? And then on the flip side, maybe are we using technology to ensure that in our personal touches, we're not introducing bias? Hopefully you've come across some cool trends, some strategies, some pitfalls that you can share. Dorothy, this time I'd like to start with you.
Yeah, so I'm seeing organizations take the time to say, now that they're realizing, you know what, we can't avoid this forever. And so in creating those rules and parameters, they're saying, all right, we typically spend a lot of time trying to put together newsletters, for example, and come up with the ideas for how do we keep our clients engaged, or how do we keep our customers engaged? And that we end up spending a lot of time there. Maybe we can use AI to figure out how we can come up with the topics, and then we can use our genius to figure out how to lay that out and make it personal to our audience. I've also seen organizations, there's one client I work with in particular who has been teaching their AI about their industry and how they can support a diverse client base and how they can build out their culture in a more meaningful way. They have been training their AI for about 8 months now. And so when they're trying to elevate the culture, when they're trying to, be even more thoughtful with how they do performance reviews, they're using AI to help them think it through. And this is an organization that it would not have occurred to me, having worked with them for the last 4 years, that that would be the first place that they go, because they are a therapy firm. And because everything is so human based, it is impressive to see how they're leaning on technology and artificial intelligence to make their jobs easier as they do the compelling work of being therapists and helping the clients that come in on a daily basis. So that's my 2 cents.
I was going to jump in there and say one of the things that we see in the data that I completely agree with there is this is about helping, as you said, Dorothy, HR leaders get to the things that really light their fire, that get them excited, the creative parts of the work. We're not usually seeing if you said, hey, which of these two things would you automate? Would you automate hold someone's hand when they're having a cancer diagnosis for a spouse, you're trying to figure out how the medical coverage is going to help them, or are you going to automate, looking through a stack of 50 resumes? They're going to pick the latter. They're not going to pick the former, because they know that first piece is a key part of what we do and how we serve as HR leaders. I'm going to give a couple quick non-mainstream examples of AI, because we talked a lot about hiring and stuff so far. I'm going to go in another direction for a second. So really quickly, 3 examples of AI that some of you may have never heard of that are kind of fun to look at. So number 1, around workforce management, scheduling, shifts, all those kind of things. When any of you that have people that work hourly roles, you're trying to figure out how to get them slotted in and get their schedules handled. One of the things we hear from that audience is that's always a pain point. Things get shared too late, things get moved around on them. And so we're seeing more companies that are using AI tools within that sort of realm to help them know what matters to that individual, know what their preferences are, know that, hey, listen, they've got a kid and they play baseball on Saturdays, so they can't work Saturdays, but they'll work Sundays, or they have to be, they have these other rules about their other requirements where they can't work. And the AI engine can help them match up the shifts and openings and options so it's the best fit for that person. Another way is around workers' comp, like the least innovative part of the work that we probably touch on in HR. There are new tools that are using AI-powered video to help look for safety issues and safety challenges and flag those before an accident or injury happens, like literally protecting the life and limb of our people. Like that really excites me, just think about those sorts of ideas. And one other one that's maybe a little edging towards the creepy side is there was a story recently in the news about IBM. They actually have put this algorithm in place on the compensation side. So let's say that Norma's out there in the chat. I see Norma chiming in. Norma is working for IBM. That algorithm would look at everything it knows about Norma, her time there, her tenure, the job she's doing, everything else, and it would pay Norma exactly enough so that she would stay, but not $1 more. She wouldn't get overpaid, but they're trying to not underpay either, so she leaves. So they're trying to pay just enough to keep her satisfied enough that she won't leave the organization. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that AI is influencing the work we're doing and influencing the opportunities we have to do creative work in HR. And it's not just tied back to, again, some of the things we talked about so far around resumes and hiring and everything else. There's so many other areas within the entire spectrum where we can really step in. Whew, goodness.
I love all of that, Ben. And what I heard you and Dorothy touch on, which it kind of just made me excited just now. You guys were all talking about things that humans sitting in a seat probably can't do as well as these AI bots, tools, engines, whatever. What I'm hearing is that these things are helping these guys get these tasks, these operational reviews, these things that might take me 2 hours to do, they can maybe do in 10 minutes, and maybe it's something I would never see. I really love those examples. And I would argue we've probably been going down this path now for at least 10 years, like maybe not in the AI realm, but like how do we do more things with technology? And I'm seeing it become more and more prevalent as AI becomes sort of like the norm in our day in life today. And the thing that stands out to me the most, and I think this applies no matter how big your company is or how small your company is, like as we start to bring on this technology and use it to make our jobs easier, faster, et cetera, I think the most important piece to walk away from is no matter how we do it, we can't lose the human element. We can't, because I feel like relationships, passion, empathy, those are the things that sort of drive our company forward, really, no matter what your role is. So yeah, I would just like to point out, I'm excited about the prospect. I do get worried about the idea of the human element sort of becoming second nature, but those examples you guys called out totally overrule that. It's helping make the human experience better. So I really loved hearing those.
Yeah, and I think, Mike, as you were talking, it just made me think of like the Heidi and Howard experiment. And so when we think about technology, this idea that Howard and Heidi's resume could be exactly the same, but we skew towards Howard, right? Because of our bias. And so the idea that we could leverage AI to take out the bias when we're looking at diverse slates and we're wanting to have a broad spectrum of candidates, that could also be a good thing, especially in a land where, you know, we are concerned about the creepy aspect and we're concerned about the replacement aspect. But what are the good things, especially in this landscape when we are concerned?
That's such a great transition to our next topic, which is AI. And Dorothy, I particularly appreciate you bringing that up because, as I said, a lot of times we think of technology as something that inhibits the personal element of what we're doing, but sometimes it can make that personal element better. But before we get too deep into the AI side of things, you'll see a poll pop up, and this is our first poll for today. What I really want to hear about from the audience is how are you already using AI or maybe not using it yet in your day-to-day work? So go ahead, take a few seconds, choose the option that best describes where AI fits into your organization, and we'll take a look at it. So as the responses come in, it's interesting. So summarizing data and analyzing data, gosh, that's such a great place to use AI. It's something that, you know, there are plenty of us out there that are Excel nerds, but you know, if we had a tool to kind of help us do that and do that more efficiently, effectively, again, it allows us to get back to the people side of things. It looks like a lot of you are also exploring AI, but haven't implemented anything yet. And I think that's a good place to be. Also a good place to be on this webinar because we're going to help you explore some of the best places to use it. And then automating repetitive tasks. Absolutely. Who wants to do repetitive tasks over and over again all day when we could be spending time with our people or doing the things that really inspire and engage us? So thank you for all of that. I think that those are some good insights and help us transition into sort of this next topic.
Right.
All
Good
right.
stuff.
So yeah, I want to bring the panel back in for their perspective on AI. It really is a hot topic, but hot topic or not, you know, we really have to think about how it can be implemented and how it can be implemented in an effective way that best utilizes our resources. And so that can be, you know, anywhere from the entire employee lifecycle, recruiting, onboarding, development, offboarding. And I want to talk about sort of all of those aspects. And I know that each of our panelists have a unique perspective on sort of the different areas in the employee life cycle. So we're going to start with Ben again on this one to kind of kick it off.
Yeah. So again, I've already shared some fun examples here, and fair warning for everybody out there listening, this is not an AI only session, but we're giving this a lot of exposure here because as you can see in the chat, it's interesting to all of you as well. We know that. That's why this is a key part of the agenda. So I actually recently turned in the manuscript for the 3rd edition of the book, Artificial Intelligence for HR. And as I've been writing that book and the new editions over the last 7 years now, so much has changed in the space from what's available, what's out there, how advanced the tools are. And one of the things I've been watching pretty closely are robot coaches. Now, in the perfect world that none of us live in, every single manager at our companies would be as great as the best manager. So if you picture a leader you've had in the past who paid attention to your needs, who listened to your aspirations from a career perspective, who encouraged you, who motivated you to do better work, most of us don't have a leader like that, or most of our employees don't have leaders like that every single day, right? But if there was a way to put a tool in their hands that helped to see the work they're doing, to help hear their questions, to help guide them on a day-to-day basis, then that would be incredible. And that's what these robot coaches are really designed to do. It's not just a performance coach, but it looks at, lets me go in there, for example, and say, hey, this is where I am now. This is where I want to be from a career perspective. What are the steps I should take to get there? And how can I advance? And, oh, look, there's a training class in our LMS that I can take, or help me find a mentor in our business who's also made that same transition. And it connects with Mike, who's already excelling as a leader in that area. And I can go and learn, take me under his wing and learn from him. So these robot coaches help as a facilitator for individual employees. They may have a great manager, but they may not as well. And if they do have an excellent manager, this just adds value to that. If they don't, this gives them a way to be heard, to let their needs sort of shine through and for them to feel like they're getting the support they need to stay at the organization. The data tell us that even if all of you out there do every bit of your jobs perfectly, you get everything right on pay, comp, benefits, all these other culture things that are very difficult. If you got all that right, you're still only accountable for about 30% of a person's satisfaction on the job. The other 70% comes from their direct leader. And so these tools are a way to help alleviate that if they're maybe working for a manager that's just so darn busy they can't spend time with them. That gives them a way to get some of that support there. So the robot coach piece is really intriguing to me. Dorothy, I know you really get excited about talking about some of the different areas where AI is filtering into other parts of the process, whether it's onboarding, hiring, so on. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, and so when I think about onboarding, number one, there's a lot of organizations that don't do onboarding, and there's lots of organizations that do new employee orientation and call it onboarding. But onboarding, as I define it, is this idea of you are going through this process of some days, not a couple hours, some days where you are getting this new person to really drink the Kool-Aid, because the purpose of this is to get that extension. It takes about 45 days for someone to realize, I made a mistake, and start looking for a new job. When we do onboarding and when we do it well, we double, if not triple that. And because they're drinking the Kool-Aid of this organization and this culture, they are going to have the fortitude and constitution to work through the growing pains of being the new kid on the block. So having said that, in this landscape, I believe technology plays a critical role because we're doing something, for all intents and purpose, we've never done before. And what I mean by that is we were really, really good at working in person. We've been doing that for literal decades. Now, there are some folks who they were remote before remote got cool and before remote became mandatory. However, for many organizations, they could not wrap their mind around this idea of productivity and not being in the office. And COVID forced that upon not everybody, but most of us. Now we're in this new landscape where it's hybrid. There's some folks that are never coming into the office. There's some folks that will always be in the office. And then we've got the folks in the middle who are the wintry mix of both. And so then it begs the question, if we've got all three instances, which we are not good at, we could fight in the parking lot if you want to, but we really aren't good at this because we haven't had a lot of practice in this space. We do have to start leveraging technology. What would onboarding look like if we do virtual tours of the office, even if we don't have an actual office? What could onboarding look like if we are doing synchronous and asynchronous learning as folks get ready to come on board? What would onboarding look like knowing that this person over here is going to have to figure out, how do I get promoted from the couch while this person gets FaceTime with the senior leaders who all come in the office? And so I think that, yes, in a landscape where we've got a little bit of nerves and a little bit of trepidation, figuring out what tools we can leverage to make onboarding fun, to make it engaging, and to make it exciting, knowing that there's going to be that individual who will never step foot in this office, right? Unless we're intentional. And there's this individual who will never work from home. And then we've got the folks in the center who are going to be doing a little bit of all of the above, and kind of setting that precedence in onboarding. Hey, we do things synchronously and asynchronously. We are remote. However, we come together in micro environments 4 to 6 times a year, and here's why we do it. Yes, we're remote, but we have satellite areas because there's 5 of us in Shreveport, there's 10 of us in DFW, and there's 20 of us in the New York area. And so we come together, once a month or quarterly, and then getting the full benefit of all the different types of tech that we can leverage in order to make onboarding meaningful, impactful, and of course, get folks to drink the Kool-Aid, especially in a landscape where we've got the war for talent and the great resignation going on all at the same time. All right. What do you think?
All that, Dorothy. Oh, sorry. Did I cut someone off?
Oh, no, I was asking what you think.
Oh, I'm super freaking inspired by everything you just said, by the way. Speaking of onboarding, like you got to get them to actually pick up the cup of Kool-Aid first. And I think it might have been Tasia in the chat touched on this, the interviewing and the candidate experience right at the beginning. And I've seen some really cool stuff start happening recently. One not so cool, one so cool. I'm gonna give you two examples. So one of the things I've started to see come up pretty prevalently in the last 2 years is actual sort of AI powered application experience, right? Where you go to put in your application for a job, and instead of it being this blank form where you're typing stuff in and dropping your resume, it's an actual AI bot that's walking you through the process. Like, oh, okay, tell me about your school history. What did you major in? And it's a very interactive experience, and it has a little bit of a human element, and it's kind of warm. I actually did something like this a couple of years ago before it was fancy, and I was really inspired by it. Didn't get the job. I ended up verified first, which I'm really happy with, but it was a really cool experience. The other thing I've seen, and it's not quite as fun, is an initial interview being done by an AI bot. Can you imagine, as a person, your first exposure to the company from an interview perspective being with something that's clearly a robot? You don't get to show off your empathy, your relationship skills. You don't get to have a conversation with a real person. It's sort of off-putting. And you were talking, Dorothy, about bringing them on so they can start drinking the Kool-Aid. You can't even get them to take the cup if they're not happy or incited or excited or motivated to even come into your company in the first place. And I think it's really, really important to find the right balance with that stuff. There was something else you touched on too. You were talking about like virtual office tours and things like that. I just want to give you guys a personal example. For me, when I'm really, really interested in a candidate, I take it one step further. I'm kind of biased in what I'm looking for, right? And I sell my spiel on who we are and what we are and how we do things. I let them talk to the people doing the job already. I don't hire anyone until they're talking to the people on the team they're going to be working with. And it really, really helps me get some fantastic candidates. And I feel like I've made some really good hires as a result. So bringing them into that office, however you can, whether it's through a virtual tour, whether it's through talking to someone, whether it's through like even maybe like joining a meeting and signing an NDA to see how you do business. There's so many options there.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, it's so clear that AI may have started as a buzzword, but now it's genuinely reshaping how we hire and engage talent for good and for bad. And that's why we have to be really careful and thoughtful about how we use it. And so this is a good transition really into evolving practices, because that's AI is a constantly evolving practice and how we're using it. And so I think, again, it's a segue into our next topic, which is how is employee experience continuing to evolve? We know that it's no longer just about perks. Hey, I've had some fun ping pong games in the office and enjoyed smoothies at lunch, but it's more than that, right? So I'd like to hear from each of our panelists what changes we're seeing as organizations are really diving deeper into keeping up the pace with the evolving expectations of today's workforce. And I'm going to kick it to Dorothy first this time.
Okay, I think I'm off mute. All right. Well, when I think about the experience around the evolution when it comes to technology and when it comes to figuring out how do we maximize our talent, when it comes to activating the talent and just talent acquisition in general, what I do believe that technology offers an opportunity for us to do is to have a clear process where we can say, these are the steps and these are the things that we're looking at. What I have noticed, especially like 15, 20 years ago in particular, a lot of this stuff was very subjective. And so you do all the steps on that sheet of paper to get a promotion, and then it goes to the person next to you. And there's nothing to be able to indicate like, why did I not get this opportunity? And then you get something vague like, you weren't being strategic. Okay, but what does that mean? How do I do that? And so when we have technology at our fingertips, we can really start to identify, what do these actual steps look like? How can I do my one-on-ones better? How can I advocate for myself better? How can I go about getting a mentor? How can I go about getting a sponsor or a champion, especially if you are a person of color, because mentoring doesn't help us as much. But what does this look like? And being able to have technological tools versus just saying, go read Lean In or go read the memo, but being able to say, well, hey, Chat GPT, hey, Poe, here's what's happening at work in my career right now, and because I've been training you for the last 5 months, how do I navigate these next few opportunities that are coming my way? What are some things that I could do to position myself better? So what I mean by that is when I'm thinking about how do I position myself as a great candidate, Chat GPT and other AI tools can help me with that. But even once I'm in, I can ask questions like, if I did not want to support this individual across their career journey, what could I do to kill it? That way you get ideas along your journey about what not to do and what to avoid. Because what I've found, even in my own career, I can't tell you all how many times I shot myself in the foot and I didn't know. And no one told me that I was committing CLMs, career limiting moves. But with the tools that we have available now, we can avert career suicide. And even if we're going at the very beginning of the process, we can have practice interviews with these different tools. Because I gotta say, there are so many people who do not kill it in the interview and they're not permitted to progress because they don't have great interviewing skills and they did not practice. And then you can say, well, I don't have anyone to practice with. Well, in this landscape, you have tools where you can practice, so you can practice answering the questions. Because what I notice is that we get nervous, we feel like we're killing it, we're using STAR and any other tool, and we're not answering the question, so we can't shine and we can't display competence, capability, and this opportunity to be able to execute with brilliance. And so I do think it's an evolution. I think that for the last 20 years, we've been saying that employees are a lot smarter than they used to be. And so now I believe in this landscape, we can be even smarter with how we go through the employee life cycle, not just getting the job, but how do we come up with that 120-day plan once we're in the job? How do we make sure that we ask right questions? It's not supposed to be one-sided. It's not just, oh, I want this job so bad, and I'm just going to answer all your questions and then I'm done. I need to be interviewing you as well. I need to make sure that I understand your organizational structure and that it's one that I can thrive in. But if I can't think of that, I can use these tools to help me think of right questions based on what I need when it comes to like Martin Seligman's PERMA model so that I can flourish. I don't want to just survive your culture. I want to thrive in it. And there are tools, I believe, that can help me do that. I hope
I love that, Dorothy. You're giving me my next business idea, like candidate prep 101. Here's a bunch of AI tools.
Yes, you have to.
Yeah, I'm going to see you after this call.
We have to.
Yeah, well, it was really cool that you were talking about, and particularly the interview piece. I haven't thought of that before. Like, if I'm jonesing for a good job that I'm super duper interested in, why wait till I actually talk to someone? Why can't I do faux interviews with AI? I love that quite a bit, actually. Speaking of interviews and onboarding, there's one thing I wanted to touch on when we talk about the evolution of the candidate experience. You started to touch on this earlier, but I want to dive in a little bit deeper. As you guys are starting to hire these days, you've got those three options of how people are coming into the office: remote, hybrid, and then complete, like back in the office. And how are you getting people that like one or the other, maybe a mixture of both, the right balance of incentivizing them to be there? And one of the things I've found fascinating is the folks that love working at home, they won't even look at an office job. They won't even want to talk about it. And vice versa. The people that love to be in an office, they won't even consider a remote job. I'd be really interested in how we're sort of balancing out that right sort of mix of candidate and I guess finally employee experience, right? Like once they're in the door, if someone wants to work remote, but they're the best candidate, like, are you making exceptions? If they want to be in the office, are you going to give them a space? It's a really interesting thing that I think is starting to pop up quite a bit lately. And I've had that problem myself trying to hire good candidates where I'm like, yeah, we're a fully remote company. Like, nope, not for me. I'm like, are you sure? Like, you're amazing. Like, what can I do to incentivize you? And, if you're in the right area, we find accommodations. But anyways, you were touching on that earlier, Dorothy. I just wanted to pull it back out because I think it's fascinating when we talk about the evolution of what that looks like. And I'm really, really, really interested to see what this looks like 2 years from now, because I think we're all as different companies and industries going to start finding our feet on what the norm and the right looks like, if there even is a right, if that makes sense. What do you think, Ben? I'll pass it on to you.
I'm having so much fun watching the chat, Mike. Like everybody is, I think you and Dorothy have a fan club over here. Like they're all like doing the applause thing. Ginny, I know we're kind of keeping to the time, so you want to pass us? I think we have a poll coming up real quick.
We sure do. I think that was a great deep dive, though, into some of the evolution of the employee experience. Some of the thoughts that you had about how we're, like you're saying, figuring out what's right is really important. So here's the next poll. What trends do you predict will have the biggest impact this year? I think it'll be great to kind of see into each of your crystal balls as what you're thinking is going to be the most important trends. Looks like we've got AI takeover in the lead here, which is indicative of the conversation that we've had today. It's on everybody's mind. Hybrid work, still a big conversation 5 years in, almost to the day. We're coming up on that time in March where we all start to have our PTSD. And then personalized learning and upskilling, also one of the top answers here. So I think this is really interesting. So let's talk a little bit more about those trends. I think that was a really great transition for our panelists to kind of think through about what they want to talk to you about as far as those trends are. And we're going to start out with Ben, like you mentioned, and kind of start off thinking about what are those biggest trends for 2025 and really beyond.
I've got to say, as someone who writes books about AI, that the publisher's probably thrilled with that AI takeover comment, by the way. So just on for their benefit, yeah, I'll thank y'all for that. So a couple things really quick. Two things for me top of mind that are big trends that I'm watching closely. Number one is this demand to do more with less. And by the way, if you're in the chat, you can give me like a thumbs up there on that one. But I'm hearing from so many of my friends out there in the space who are doing the work like all of you, saying, I'm being asked to do even more things with the same or fewer resources, and it's creating a lot of the HR burnout, honestly, that we're seeing in the data that keeps going in. So that's a big thing that's being pushed hard. The other one that I wanted to touch on is flexibility, but we talked about like the remote, hybrid, in office. The other flexibility I want to talk about is the other types of ways you can be flexible with your people. For example, when you get to offer them a chance to have a say-so in how they get their work done. They get a little bit more autonomy in their day-to-day work, or they get a choice when they work, maybe some of that flexibility in the scheduling piece, or maybe even they get a chance to raise their hand if they got an idea. I love telling the story. We had an employee years ago, one of our engineers, who raised this idea, and our leadership could have said, hey, be quiet, stay in your lane. But they said, you know what, that's interesting. We'll look at that. And it became a multi-million-dollar line of business for the company. They gave her a very nice bonus as a reward and a thank you. And it all came because we had a culture that said, if you've got an idea, raise your hand. We want to hear them because you're on the front lines as our employees. We appreciate what you offer. So those are some of the things that I'm seeing in the data that are big trends, big focal areas. And it sounds like here in the chat that everybody's sort of chiming in that, yes, that demand to do more things with fewer resources is a reality you're all facing. So you've got my empathy there, because as I said earlier, I started my career in HR. I've been in HR department of one at some organizations I worked for and stuff. And so I know how hard that can be. Dorothy, what do you think are some of the big trends that you're watching this year?
I think from my standpoint, right, I'm the leadership development girly, and that is the trend encompassed in this conversation to me. For the individuals who are shaking in their boots, and their teeth are chattering and they're wondering, am I going to be replaced? And I saw in the chat that folks were talking about like people just don't have the skills, the workforce isn't as skilled as it used to be. For the individual who is not focused on skilling up and mastering their craft, whatever it may be, yes, a computer, a robot, AI technology, it will absolutely replace you if you are making a conscious decision to say, I want ChatGPT to do all of my work for me. I don't think that the human element is going anywhere, but what will be required is for us to essentially put on our thinking caps and say, how can I, with all of my years of mastery, whether it's 2, 5, 10, or 20, how can I leverage that to be efficient and effective? So if you are great at leadership development, well, then no, maybe you don't have to develop all the points in your class because you've been doing this for a long time. Maybe AI can help you with that so that you can focus on what are the things I want to highlight? What are the activities that I want to do to drive this home? If you are, the HR coordinator that's supposed to be that front line as people are coming in and entering into the space and getting a look and feel for how this organization is going to be. Maybe you don't want to spend so much time crafting the emails to all the departments that you need to coordinate with, but you want to focus on those people-centric elements. And so what I think is that creative leadership and leadership in general is going to be part of this trend. Those will be the individuals who will survive this, if you will. They will not just survive, they will thrive because they're willing to lead from every seat they sit in and be able to lean on technology. We're not going to be here forcing BlackBerry to still exist and forcing flip phones to still exist. We're going to enter into this new era and say, you know what? I am a leader. Even if I don't have direct reports, I'm a leader. I'm required to lead from every seat I sit in. AI is a tool. It is not the end all be all, but it is a tool that I can leverage and couple with my competence, my capability, and my confidence to execute with brilliance. That's my 2 cents.
I freaking love that, Dorothy. I'm so motivated hearing you talk about leveraging AI to get better at your jobs. Rather than AI taking your job, you're using it to get better at something maybe you don't understand quite as well. And I was reading this thing, if any of you guys use Reddit for anything at all, there's this thing that popped up, and I think it was called like the rule of 3. And it was like, if you want to become good at something you've never been good at before, go into ChatGPT and say, tell me the 3 most important things I need to learn to become an intermediate expert at whatever the subject may be. And it'll give you the top most 3 important things you need to learn. And you can even put like time constraints around it where it's like, I've only got a month, like what should I focus on? And it essentially will give you a guidebook. I find that fascinating, and I haven't thought about that a long time, so I heard you giving that example. Anyways, I'm walking away from this meeting incredibly motivated for a lot of different things. There's one last thing I just want to call out when we're talking about AI and jobs and things like that, and I'm going to give Ben credit for this because we were talking about this the other day. There was this massive credit company that I think last year, the year before, laid off a significant part of their workforce. I don't remember the number, but it was something like 50%. Said we're moving to AI because it's going to be better and smarter and faster. We're going to save money. And what we were talking about was a year later, they had to hire all those people back. And that's still happening today. If you guys get bored, like after we get off of this webinar, go into Google and, and just, what companies are laying people off for AI and maybe make a bookmark. I'd be fascinated to see if we go back like a year from now, if those same things are happening, if people are having to build their workforce back up. Anywho, thanks, Dorothy. That was really inspiring.
Awesome. Yes. What a fascinating look you all provided into what we might be seeing just around the corner. I appreciate all of those commentaries. We have had some great questions come in, so we are going to move to the next section and go ahead and get into some of the audience Q&A. And I'd actually like to start with a question. So I see some of the questions are coming through here right in the chat. I will try to pick those out, but if you put them in the Q&A, that way I will be sure to definitely see them. And this one, I'll really let anybody kind of chime in. I saw Janet put this one in the chat. Does anybody have a suggestion on finding AI training specifically around recruiting? Any ideas about where we might have some training resources for that?
I was going to chime in. I thought I was on mute. Goodness. Social Talent is a good source. They're a partner to a lot of companies in the space from a TA perspective. And I got a chance to meet their team last fall, and they've been building things on this front, helping recruiters before AI was a real thing. So Social Talent is a good one. No affiliation there. Just I met the team recently and really respect the work that they're doing there.
Great. Thanks for that, Ben.
Yeah,
another question that's come in through the Q&A. With not enough skilled workers coming into the workforce, reskilling and retention will be key, and it needs to be more cost effective. What ideas does the panel have around AI or other resources to make reskilling and retention in particular more cost effective?
Dorothy, you want to start here? I've got some thoughts, but I think this is like your passion area.
Yeah, so I would say if you have access within your organization to like the training department, learning, leadership development department, leaning on them and their skill set and their acumen first, Now, for the organizations that are smaller, or maybe that team only handles compliance and maybe like being able to do your job, I would say using programs like Coursera and Skillsoft and LinkedIn, and even the tools that give you like the breakdown of what's written in the book, and it gives you essentially the Cliffs Notes and a podcast version, and then implementing a leadership moment. And what I mean by that is the team comes to the team meeting and it just rotates. And so this individual spends 5 to 10 minutes doing a learning snack, if you will. Like, let me tell you about the importance of empathy in meetings, or let me tell you about the importance of, not cutting people off, or let's talk through what it looks like to have better meeting agendas. But you just rotate so that we can start to each one teach one, if you will. And no, it doesn't replace like an expert, like a me or a Mike or a Ben. It doesn't replace that, but it keeps us trucking along nicely while we wait for the opportunity to be able to invest, because there are a lot of organizations that cannot invest right now, and they're not even doing the bare minimum to kind of keep our wheels greased, if you will, while we wait for the opportunity for an investment to show up.
Yeah, great points there, Dorothy. I'll add to that what we see is, let's put the data aside for a second. As a human being, most of you have probably experienced what I've experienced, where you're doing work for a company, you think you're doing well, an opportunity comes up, and you say, "Hey, I'd love to try for that." And again, they're like, "Get back in your lane." They don't even give you a chance at it, or they hire someone when you're like, "I would have loved the opportunity to be considered there." And so what we see in going back to the research now is that when companies say they're actually developing people inside the business versus hiring outside, we spent so much time today talking about hiring outside, but looking for your people inside the business who have the interests, who have the skills, who have the aspirations of doing some of that work. It's less expensive. It's less risky, right? They're more likely to understand your values of the business and what matters to your company and how to serve your customers, and those things they pick up through working there. They know those things. Someone outside may not. So I just want to give you that encouragement. If you're at one of those places and your leaders, for whatever reason, think, well, I'm sure the perfect candidate's out there that has no flaws, no warts, no problems, that we can't consider the person inside because they've got challenge A, B, or C, right? You're probably fighting those same battles that I've had to fight as well, but don't give up on that, because the data show it's a great way to go. And as Mary pointed out, there aren't enough people in some areas to replace some of the roles that we need, some of the skilled trades. I saw some of you posted in the chat about that. I was listening to a recent piece that scared the pants off me, honestly, about building nuclear submarines. We don't have enough people to actually do it safely. Like, you think about the long-term limitations those things create, and one of the best things we can do is look for initiative, look for the interest from the people who are already there. A friend used to say, gather a bouquet of flowers from those within reach. The people that are already there, they're within reach. Let's gather that bouquet from there versus going elsewhere looking for it. That's my encouragement.
I love that, Ben. And it reminded me of something really, really powerful we do at our existing company. So when you're talking about making sure you find the right people that already work for you to do the new jobs or the different jobs, there's something my company does incredibly well. And I'm just going to credit all of this to my CEO, and I'll be fast. Instead of focusing on the things people don't do well, we do this thing called strength finding, where we figure out the places and the areas and skills people are good at, where they're passionate about, and where they can dive in and just do a great, great job. And what we do, and for, I don't remember who asked the question, but whoever asked that question, the thing that's been really, really successful, we find out what people are good at, and we help inspire, motivate, and give them tools to get better at it so they can move into the jobs where they can use those skills. Because if someone's doing something that they're great at and they love doing, odds are they're going to do it way, way better than someone that's just coming in for a paycheck. If you give them the tools and the resources to do something they're not great at, and they don't feel good about doing it, it's going to be a weird situation for both of you. So I think that really fits into what you were saying, Ben, about finding the talent you already have. So anyone's interested, Strength Finder, look it up. It's out of this world. It helps you really, really pull out the things your people are good at and motivate, inspire, and invest in them to do more of that.
Yes, Strength Finder is such a great tool. Thank you for bringing that up, Mike. I'm going to move on to the next question. This one comes in from Tori. Could you summarize the difference between a mentoring program and a sponsorship or champion program?
Yeah, and I will also try to be quick. So often when we get a mentor, it is someone who is more than likely a couple steps ahead of us. And you can think Kobe Bryant, right? And Michael Jordan. It's not like he had 10 extra rings. And so we get someone who has walked in those shoes and can give us advice and can give us guidance and can say, well, when it happened to me, X, if I were you, I would. Now, what often happens is that this individual doesn't necessarily have any personal skin in the game to the extent that they will mention your name in rooms that you are not in yet. When you have a sponsor, an advocate, or a champion, this person has personal skin in the game to bring your names up in rooms that you are not in yet. And they have a personal stake in making sure that you get that next opportunity. So they're not standing by and saying, if I were you, I would. It's more like you need to. And often in the world of work, we're getting 98% of the feedback that we need. However, that 2% is what's holding us back. Your sponsor, your advocate, your champion, they will give you that 2%. Everyone else is tiptoeing because they don't want to hurt your feelings and they don't want you to flip a desk over. However, we need that 2% to advance. Your sponsor and champion will have personal skin, personal stake in the game, and they've got influence and likability in the organization to ensure that you get the next opportunity that's available. That was like the fast version, but we could totally talk about.
That was impressive, Dorothy. That was so fast. I was going to say that you started talking about that piece, and I heard a lady a few years ago talk about it this way. She said, as the person in front of me took a step up the ladder, they reached back and pulled someone up behind them. And that's the picture I was getting in my head as you were talking about that. Like, this isn't just a thing where like sit back and watch, say, well, whether I made it or not by myself, the rest of you, good luck. But it's like, how can I play an active role in that? It reminded me of when you're talking about the sponsorship and really advocating that piece of it. One of the things Chipotle does is they made a decision a few years ago that cut their manager turnover in half in their stores, by the way. And that decision was, we will never hire a manager for our stores from outside again. We're going to grow and develop. We're going to mentor. We're going to support people from inside. And to give that an extra bit of gravity, they actually started putting a bonus behind that. So if I'm a division leader and I'm growing Dorothy to take over Chipotle, I don't know if you're a Chipotle girl or not, Dorothy, but take over Chipotle and be the manager here, raising her up, I get a bonus for doing that. So there's an incentive there. It's not just hey, that'd be nice for you to go make that happen, but they're putting some money where their values are to really encourage and support that. So I love what you shared on that one. There's some practical ideas there on other companies that are trying to make that a reality.
Thank you, Ben. Absolutely. We are all out of time for questions. Again, if we did not get to your question, we will follow up with you separately after the webinar. Please stick around. We have one final poll, and after the poll, we will put up the SHRM and HRCI credit information. So again, we just want to give an opportunity for you to let us know if you'd like to learn more about today's sponsors. We've got Employee HR represented by yours truly. We've got GoCo represented by Mike. Verified First and Lighthouse, or Verified First is a sponsor as well. Lighthouse represented today by Ben, and Ellevate Collective represented by Dorothy. If you have interest in learning more about any of these sponsors, please complete this poll and we will be sure to get in touch with you. Thank you all again one more time for joining us. This was a great session.